Hello everyone, this is Jeff Amboy and welcome to another episode of my lecture series in Integral Calculus. In this video, you will learn how to calculate the area bounded by two curves. This is related to the previous topic, which is the area under a curve. However, this time, you should be the one to solve for the limits of integration. And also, since the concerned area is bounded by two curves, we need to get the difference of the two boundaries, and that is what we will integrate. That is why here, this y is equal to yu minus yl. So yu is the upper curve, which serves as the upper boundary, while yl is our lower curve that serves as the lower boundary. But before I begin my discussion, let me thank my students who are consistently sharing my lecture videos in social media. Thank you sa inyo kasi you are helping me get a wider audience and I really appreciate it. Salamat ng marami. Huhu. So, if you're watching this video, subscribe ka na sa channel ko para lagi kang updated sa mga lecture vids ko na talaga namang pinaghandaan at ineffortan para maganda ang quality. In this video, I will solve 5 example problems. In the majority of the examples, gagamit tayo ng vertical differential area element, kagaya nito, while in the last example, we will use a horizontal differential area element. So now, let's begin our discussion. For example, we are given the graph of two functions, and in between them, there is a closed region, kagaya nito. Here, we have the pink curve, and here, we have another curve, the yellow curve. And we see that between these two curves, there is a closed region formed. And gusto nating malaman ano ang area ng closed region na ito that is shaded in dark blue-green. Now, ang gusto nating gawin is to calculate the area of the closed region that is formed between the two curves. That region is colored in dark blue-green here, as you can see. Now, to get the area of this closed region bounded by these two curves, kagaya ng ginawa natin sa previous topic, gagamit tayo ng isang differential area element. Now, dito, gamit tayo ng isang vertical differential area. Yan yung tinatawag na strip, a vertical strip. And this strip has dimensions. Ano ang kanyang length? We will represent its length as y and its thickness na napakanipis kasi differential area element yan, dx. So this is y because it's along the y-axis, and this is differential of x because it's an infinitely thin element that is along the x-axis. So now the area of a single element is its length, y, multiplied by its thickness, dx. Now if we want to get the total area that is shaded here and is bounded by these two curves, we need to integrate that y dx. Okay? So here is the formula for finding the area. Area is equal to the integral of y dx, and we will integrate it from x1 to x2. Sir, ano yung y? Okay, so since our differential area element is bounded by two curves, one on top and one below, we will express this y as the difference of these two boundaries. So, sa taas, meron tayong upper curve which we labeled as yu. And below, we have a lower curve which we labeled yl. So now this y is the difference between these two. Okay, so this y, again, we will represent it as the difference between the upper curve and the lower curve. Tandaan, yung y dito sa integral ng y dx ay laging upper minus the lower curve. That will be our convention. Now, sir, how about the limits x1 and x2? So these limits are the intersections of the two curves. So in the graph, here they are. Ito yung x1 at dito naman yung x2. Of course, yan ay point. X and y yan. However, since the variable of integration here is x, dapat ang gawin nating limits ay values ng x. So again, since the variable of integration here is x, we will consider limits from x1 to x2. At this point, ano ang value ng x? That's your x1. And at this point, ano ang value ng x? That is your x2. Now, itong upper curve at lower curve na ito, yan ay parehas in terms of x. The upper curve in terms of x, and then the lower curve in terms of x. Okay? And if everything else here is in terms of x, makakapag-integrate na tayo with respect to x from x1 to x2. Okay? Now, there are situations in which it's impractical to use a vertical differential area element. For example, ganito yung region na na-form between two curves. So here, we have the yellow curve there, and here we have a line. Now, the region between them is this blue-green region here. Now, kung gagamit tayo ng isang vertical differential area element, dito kasi sa part na to, mahahati yung area into two different regions. Bakit? Kasi po, dito sa right portion, ang boundary sa taas ay yung kulay dilaw. Tapos ang boundary sa baba ay kulay pink. 'Di ba? Magkaiba sila. Pero dito sa area na ito, yung nasa left region, ang boundary lang ay yung dilaw sa taas at sa baba. 'Di ba? So ang gagawin natin diyan para ma-solve mo siya, hatiin mo to into 2. Kuhanin mo yung area dito using a vertical differential area element. And then yung area ito ay equal sa isa't isa. Okay? So the entire area here and there is just 2 times the area of this one. Tapos i-integrate mo pa yung area para dito. That is quite tedious kasi marami tayong integration na gagawin. That is why, for situations like this, it's not practical to use a vertical differential area element. Now, to make the solution simpler, instead of using a vertical strip like this one, ang gamitin na lang natin is a horizontal strip, kagaya nito. Ayan. Bakit horizontal strip? So that the boundary will be consistent. Ayan o, mula taas hanggang baba, yung boundary sa kaliwa ay yung line, at yung boundary sa kanan pala yon, at yung boundary sa kaliwa is yung yellow curve. 'Di ba? Consistent, hindi nagbabago. At dahil dyan, isang integration lang natin makukuha yung area. Now, ano naman ang dimensions ng horizontal strip na ito? We will represent its length in terms of x, and we will represent its thickness using dy because it's an infinitely thin element along the y-axis. Now, ang area ng isang differential area element ay x dy. So kung gusto mong malaman yung area ng buong region na ito, then you have to integrate x dy. And since the variable of integration is y, we will use limits that are values of y. So from y1 to y2. How about this x? Sir, ano yung x na yan? Kasi kanina, yung y ay difference ng upper at saka lower curves. Kapag x, ano ang gagawin natin? Okay, ganito yan. Yung boundary kasi natin, meron tayo sa kanan. At yung boundary na yun, yun yung gagawin nating xr, the right curve. Tapos ito namang graph na nasa kaliwa, yun ang gagawin natin na left curve. Para makuha itong x na ito, isusubtract natin yung dalawa. So this x is the right curve minus the left curve. Kanina, upper minus lower. Ngayon naman, right minus left. That will be our convention. Now, how about the values of y1 and y2? Alin yan? So kagaya pa rin kanina, yung y1 at y2 ay manggagaling sa intersection ng dalawang curves. Since the variable again is y, ang i-consider natin is yung value ng y sa point na ito. Yun ang ating y1. At yung value ng y dito sa point na ito, and that is our y2. So now, we will integrate x dy from y1 to y2. O di ba madali lang? Sobrang dali lang yan. Okay? At mas marirealize nyo na madali lang yan kapag tayo ay nag-solve na ng mga examples. Now, sir, you may ask, paano ko malalaman yung values ng x1 at x2? Paano ko malalaman yung values ng y1 at ng y2 kung hindi sila given? Yan, magandang tanong yan. Now, sinabi natin na itong mga limits na ito ay intersection ng dalawang curves. Yung upper at lower or possibly yung right at saka left curve. So, para makuha mo yung values ng limits, e-equate mo lang kung ano ang pinag-minus mo. So, kung ano yung pinag-minus dito, e-equate mo lang, solve for x, makukuha mo na yung x1, x2. Dito naman, ganun din. Kung ano yung pinag-minus natin dito, e-equate mo lang sila. Solve for y, makukuha mo na yung values ng y1 at saka y2. Okay? So again, para mas malinaw at mas maunawaan mo, let us solve some examples. Here's the first example. Find the area of the region that is bounded by the curves f of x equals x plus 1 and g of x equals x squared minus 2x. Yan. So ang skill na kinakailangang meron ka sa pagkukompute ng area is yung graphing skill mo. Okay? So, dapat ma-identify mo, ano bang graph ng function na ito? So, kita naman natin, x plus 4, di ba? Obviously, this is a line. Okay? So, ilagay natin dito that f of x is a line. At kung yan ay line, pwede natin yang express in terms of the form y equals mx plus b. So, yung f of x, gawin ko na lang y. So, na y is equal to x plus 4. Now, to graph this line, we need at least 2 points. Diba? So, una natin gawin nating 0 yung x. Kapag itong x na to 0, ang y ay 4. Diba? So, meron na agad tayong isang point. 0, 4. Now, balik ta rin natin. Ang gawin naman nating 0 is yung y. Ano ang value ng x? Kapag itong y ay 0, itong x magiging negative 4. So, that will give us another point, negative 4 and 0. Diba? Madali lang. Now, how about g of x? Okay. So, this g of x is quadratic, right? Kaya, common sense, kung quadratic yan, anong graph ng quadratic function? Yes, that's a parabola. So, yung g of x ay magbibigay sa atin ng isang parabola. Yan. So, kung naka-square ang x, vertical ang axis niyan. It's either siya ay opening upward or opening downward. And if you recall, ano ba ang standard form ng isang parabola na vertical ang axis? If you recall, that's x minus h squared equals plus minus 4a times y minus k. So here, yung vertex natin ay equal sa hk. Ito yon h. At saka ito yung k. Now, kapag itong term na to nag-positive, opening upward yung parabola mo. Kapag naman nag-negative, opening downward ang parabola. So, what we should do is to express this in terms of the standard form. So, yung g of x, gagawin ko lang siyang y. Ito siya. Y equals x squared minus 2x. Now, gawin natin siyang standard form. X squared minus 2x. Para maging standard form yan, we will complete the square. So, completing the square, kalahati ng negative 2 is negative 1, and the negative 1 squared is 1. Equals, ito kopyahin ko lang, y. Since dito nagdagdag ako ng 1, dito magdadagdag din ako ng 1 para pantay. I can now express this as x minus 1 squared equals y plus 1. O, diba? Itong form na to, eto na siya. So, obviously, kita na natin kung ano ang vertex ng parabola na ito. Ang vertex niya ay 1 kasi ang h niya ay 1, diba? X minus h. So, x minus 1, that means h is 1. And then, meron tayong k, y plus 1, meaning that k is negative 1. And since positive yung term dito, yan ay opening upward. So imagine, meron tayong line at meron tayong parabola. So anong itsura ng graph niyan? Now, i-graph na natin yung dalawa para makita natin kung anong itsura ng region na ating hinahanap. Okay? So gawa tayo dito ng x at saka y axis para mag-graph natin. So yung unang point ay 0, 4. Yung 0, 4 para ma-graph natin yung line. 0, 4, 0 and then ang y ay 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ito siya. Tapos, meron tayong negative 4, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ayan. So, ito yung line mo ngayon. Tapos, may parabola. Yung parabola daw natin, ang vertex ay nasa 1, negative 1. So, ito yon 1 and then negative 1. Okay, dito na lang siya. Tapos, i-drawing natin yung parabola opening upward. Okay, opening upward. Ito siya. Yan. So, kung itong line na to magdire-diretso pataas, of course, these two graphs will form a region between them that is closed. At yun yung kuhanan natin ng area. So, somehow, meron na tayong idea kung ano yung area. Now, para mas maganda, syempre nag-prepare na ako ng mas accurate na graph. Eto siya. So, itong graph na ito at saka ito parehas lang din yan. Kaso nga lang, mas maganda ito kasi accurate siya. 'Di ba? Because you deserve better, you deserve high quality videos. Kaya kinakailangan presentable at maganda yung mga graph natin. So now, ito yung region na hahanapan natin ng area. Yung nasa pagitan ng line at saka ng parabola. Okay? Ano nga ang formula sa pagko-compute ng area between two curves? Remember, the area is equal to the integral of y times dx. Diba? And remember, this y is the difference between the upper and the lower curve. So, upper curve minus the lower curve and then dx. So, kinakailangan nating ma-identify alin yung upper curve. So, kita naman natin sa graph na yung upper curve, yung upper boundary is yung line. 'Di ba? So, lagyan natin dito, ito yung y upper. No? Tapos, kitang-kita rin natin na yung lower boundary or lower curve is yung parabola. So, ito naman yung gagawin nating YL. Okay? So, substitute na natin yan dito. A is equal to the integral of the upper curve. Ano yung upper curve natin? That's the line. So, x plus 4 minus the lower curve, which is this parabola. That's x squared minus 2x. Tapos, yan ang i-integrate natin dx. So, now, ano na lang ang kulang dito? Ang kulang na lang is yung limits. So, paano natin makukuha yung limits na yan? Sabi ko kanina, kung ano ang pinag-minus ay i-equate mo lang, no? And then solve for x, makukuha mo na yung limits of integration. So, tandaan ha, para makompute ang limits of integration, kinakailangan nating malaman ang intersection ng dalawang graph na ito. Saan ba sila nag-intersect? Dito kasi, hindi accurate yung graph. So, hindi natin makikita. Kinakailangan natin malaman ano ang value ng x dito. At ano ang value ng x dun sa intersection nung line at nung parabola na hindi natin makita kasi nasagad na siya. Again, para makompute yon, we will solve for the limits. No? Solving for the limits. Anong gagawin? Kung anong pinag-minus, e-equate. So, x plus 4 equals x squared minus 2x. So, this x squared has no similar term. So, itong x na to ilipat ko doon. So, x squared minus 3x. Tapos, itong positive 4 ilipat ko, magiging minus 4 equals 0. So, we now have a quadratic equation. Factorable ba yan? Yes. Let's factor. Ano ang factors ng negative 4 na ang sum ay negative 3? So, that's x plus 1 and x minus 4. Diba? Ayan. So, from this, makukuha na natin yung values ng limits natin. Yung x1, obviously, ay negative 1. At yung x2 ay equal sa positive 4. Ayan. So, meron na tayong limits ngayon from negative 1 to 4. Now, kung may graph ka naman na accurate, dapat kita sa graph yan. Ayan, no? So, dito sa point na to, ang value ng x ay equal sa negative 1. Yan yung x1 natin. And at this point, yung x2 ay positive 4. Ayan, no? Positive 4. At ito naman, kung ito negative 2, ito ay negative 1. Okay? So, kitang-kita yan sa graph. However, sa exam, kinakailangan mong ipakita yung solution kung paano mo na-compute yung values ng limits. Hindi pwedeng sabihin mo na, sir, kita sa graph. Okay? So, again, hindi pwede yun. During examinations, you have to show the solution kung paano mo na-compute or nalaman ang limits. Now, sa next slide, sulat na natin yung area na integrate natin. Area is equal to the integral of x minus negative 2x is positive 3x. So, 3x. Tapos, plus 4 tapos minus x squared. Minus x squared. At yan ang ating i-integrate from negative 1 to 4. You know, again here, x1 is negative 1 and there, x2 is positive 4. Now, we are ready to integrate. Integrating, makakakuha tayo dito ng 3 halves x squared plus 4x minus x cubed over 3. And this, we will evaluate from negative 1 to 4. Sige, evaluate na natin yan. Itong x, papalitan natin ng 4. So, 4 squared is 16. 16 over 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So, 24 plus. So, 4 times 4 is 16. Minus. 4 cube is 64 over 3. Ayan, 64 over 3. Next, minus. Palitan naman natin yung x dito ng negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. So, 3 halves. Plus. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Then, negative 1 cube is negative 1. Negative of negative is positive. So, magkakaroon tayo dito ng plus 1/3. Now, let us simplify this expression. The area is now equal to 24 plus 16 is 40 minus 64 over 3 minus, so dito ang common denominator natin ay 6. 6 divided 2 is 3 times 3, that's 9. Then 6 divided 1 is 6 times negative 4, that's negative 24. And then dito, 2 yung ilalagay natin. Kasi 2 over 6 is 1/3, di ba? Now, ito ay magiging equal sa 40 minus 64 over 3 minus, okay, simplify natin. 9 plus 2 is 11 minus 24, that's negative 13 over 6. Ayan. So now, pwede na natin itong isimplify further para makompute yung area. So here, our common denominator is 6. Yan. So, 6 times 40 is 240 minus 128. Tapos, minus, so magiging plus 13 siya. Diba? So, 240 minus 128, that's 112 plus 13 over 6. Okay. So, adding this to 112 plus 13, that will give us 125 and then over 6. So, now, na-compute na natin yung area na hinahanap natin. The area of this region that is shaded in dark blue-green is 125 over 6. Lagyan natin ng unit, square units. O, di ba? Madali lang? Okay. So, anong skill yung kinakailangan mo para makapag-compute ka ng area? This is basically just an application of the definite integral. Una, kinakailangan marunong kang mag-identify ng given function at kaya mo silang i-graph. Pag na-i-graph mo sila, dapat makukompute mo yung limits of integration. And after that, you should be able to know how to evaluate definite integrals. Now, let us solve the next example. Find the area of the region bounded by y equals x squared minus 2x and y equals 6x minus x squared. So here, the two functions given are both parabolas. Yung unang parabola, y equals x squared minus 2x. So since parehas yung signs ng y at saka ng x squared, parehas silang positive. So, meaning, yung parabola na yan ay opening upward. Okay? So, you can imagine, meron kang parabola opening upward. Ganyan. Tapos, ito namang pangalawang parabola, we may notice that y and x squared have opposite signs. Yung y positive, yung x squared term negative. So, yan ang mag-i-indicate na yung parabola mo ay opening downward. So, imagine meron kang parabola opening upward at meron kang parabola opening downward. Pangit. Ulitin natin. Parabola opening downward. Something like that. Okay? So, in between these two parabolas, may mafo-form na region. Ito siya. Lagyan natin ng shade yung region. So, this is an approximation, ano? Kung anong itsura ng area na gusto mong makuha. So, from this, kita mo na rin alin yung upper curve at saka alin yung lower curve, di ba? So, here, the upper curve is the parabola opening downward. Di ba ito yun? So, this is your upper curve and the lower curve is this parabola opening upward. So, dito, lagyan na natin ng YL. Okay? So, pwedeng from that, pwede ka nang mag-start ng iyong solution. Na kung gusto mo naman na i-graph accurately yung dalawang parabolas, express mo to in standard form. Pero pwede mo namang hindi na gawin yun. Okay? Anyway, i-standard form na rin natin para malaman natin yung actual vertex ng parabola na ito. Again, kapag na-drawing mo, roughly, yung parabola na ganito yung itsura niya, pwede ka nang mag-start ng solution mo. Pero minsan yung prof, kinakailangan na, i-graph mo yung parabola accurately. So, kinakailangan mo siyang i-graph, kaya i-convert natin ito into standard form. So, parang ito rin yung kanina, di ba? Yan din yung kanina. So, x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals y plus 1. Ito yon. Yung example number 1. Same lang sila. So, that's x minus 1 squared equals y plus 1. Kaya ang vertex ng parabola na yan ay nasa 1, negative 1, and this is opening upward. Yung pangalawang parabola naman, ito ilipat ko dun ha. So, gawin ko siyang positive x squared, tapos minus 6x. Saka ako mag-completing the square. X squared minus 6x. So, kalahati ng negative 6 is negative 3 squared is positive 9 equals, ito ililipat ko, gagawin kong negative y siya. Tapos magdadagdag ako ng 9. So, complete na yung square natin, di ba? I can express this as x minus 3 squared equals, dapat yung negative sign ilalabas ko, negative of y minus 9. So, kita na natin yung vertex. Ito yung h at ito yung k. So, the vertex is at 3, 9 and this parabola is opening downward kasi negative ito. Okay? So, ganyan yung mafo-form mo na graph. Now, of course, pinaghandaan ko na yan. Gumawa ako ng isang graph na accurate. Yan. Di ba? Halos magkamukha naman sila. So, yung unang parabola natin, ito yung kulay green. Ang vertex niya ay nasa 1, negative 1. Ito yon. Tapos, ito yung pangalawang parabola, opening downward. Ang vertex niya ay 3, 9. Okay? 3, 9. Kita naman natin sa graph accurate. Yan. Now, pwede na tayong mag-compute ngayon ng area. Ano ang differential area element na ating gagamitin? So, for this example, gagamit ulit tayo ng isang vertical differential area element, no? At yung kanyang length at width ay lalagyan natin ng label. Yung length niya ay y at yung thickness niya ay dx. Tapos yung y, again, that's the difference between the upper boundary and the lower boundary. Ano yung upper curve natin? Ang upper curve natin ay ito, yung parabola opening downward, and the lower boundary is the parabola opening upward. So, I will now write the expression for finding the area. Area is equal to the integral of y dx, kung saan yung y ay equal sa upper minus the lower curve. Tapos, isubstitute natin, ano ba ang upper curve? Integral of, lagyan natin dito ng bracket. The upper curve is 6x minus x squared minus the lower curve, which is x squared minus 2x. Yan. Tapos, dx. Now, again, ang kulang na lang natin, kagaya ng problem kanina, is yung limits, di ba? Again, paano tayo magsusolve ng limits? So, hindi pwede na tingnan mo na lang sa graph, sir, ayan o 0. Tapos ito, sir, ayan o ang value 4. So, kinakailangan natin maipakita mathematically. So, again, we will solve for the limits. Solving for the limits. Paano nga sinosolve ang limits? Kung ano ang pinag-minus, e-equate. So, 6x minus x squared equals x squared minus 2x. So, itong x squared na to, isasama ko lang doon, magiging 2x squared siya. Diba? Tapos, itong 6x, ililipat ko sa kabila. So, magiging minus 8x equals 0. So, dito, kitang-kita natin na common factor ang 2x. 2x, and then may matitirang x minus 4 equals 0. So, from this, obviously, kita na natin kung ano ang values ng x1 at saka x2, di ba? So, if 2x is equal to 0, then x1 is 0. And x minus 4 is 0, that means x2 equals positive 4. Okay, so nakuha na natin ngayon, algebraically, yung values ng lower at upper limits. Nakita rin natin graphically, ayan o, pwede mong i-check. So, pag halimbawa, nakita mo sa graph, no, 0 at saka 4. So, at the back of your mind, dapat pala, ang limits ko ay 0 at 4. Palabasin natin yan, di ba? So, this graph is actually a way of checking if your limits are correct. Now, sulat natin yung expression ng area. So, the area is now equal to the integral of, okay, combine like terms, 6x minus negative 2x is positive 8x, and then minus x squared minus x squared. So, minus 2x squared dx. Yan na ngayon yung i-integrate natin from 0 to 4. O, di ba? At dahil wala na tayong space, next slide. Pag in-integrate natin to, ang makukuha natin is 8x squared over 2, or that is simply 4x squared. Sulat natin, the area is 4x squared. Tapos, pag in-integrate mo to, magiging 2/3 x cube yan. Minus 2/3 x cube. And this is what we will evaluate from 0 to 4. Lower limit, upper limit. Now, evaluating, so this x will be replaced with 4. 4 squared, 16. Times 4, 64. So, we have 64 minus. So, we have here x cubed. Ganun pa rin, no? 64 times 2, 128. So, 128 over 3. Then, minus, yung lower limit natin ay 0. So, pag itong dalawang x na ito, pinalitan natin ng 0, 0 sila parehas, di ba? So, now let us simplify this expression. Ang common denominator natin ay 3. 3 times 64, that's 192. Minus 128. Okay? Now, what is 192 minus 128? That's 64. Okay? So, now, the answer is 64 over 3 square units. Is that easy? Yes. Madali lang siya. Again, this is just an application of the definite integral. Now, kung napansin nyo, hindi naman natin kinailangan ng calcu. Okay? Kailangan lang natin dyan is, sa pag-evaluate ng definite integral, yung basic arithmetic ay ma-practice mo. So again, no need to use a calculator. Hindi pa siya ganun kakomplikado para mag-calcu ka. Next, example number 3.